Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Dominick from the Comic Book Report YouTube channel over here doing a guest review for organicpricedbooks.com. And today I have the distinct pleasure of doing a quick overview for the Fantastic Four Omnibus by Mark Millar and Bryan Hitch from Marvel Comics. The issues in this volume are primarily written by Mark Millar and illustrated primarily by Bryan Hitch, but there are a few other creators as well that help on various issues in this omnibus. The comics in this volume were first published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2008. The volume itself collects Fantastic Four issues 554 through 569 and Annual 32. It also includes Fantastic Force issues 1 through 4 and Marvel 1985 issues 1 through 6. This omnibus is an oversized hardcover collection with glossy print paper stock and a sewn binding, which I'll show momentarily, and it comes in at 784 pages. Here's a look at the front cover of the omnibus. Now, I do have the direct market cover. The standard edition cover I'll go ahead and throw up a picture of here so you can compare. Please note that their spines also have a different image in the bottom corner. This direct market has Doctor Doom. I believe the standard edition has the Fantastic Four characters. I do think the font choice and general boldness of the printing on the spine was an interesting choice for Marvel. It certainly stands out on the bookcase. I still like it, but it was a really daring choice. The back cover also has a great design with some of the Bryan Hitch character models for the Fantastic Four team, really indicative of the art style you can expect inside this book by and large. Very, very nice, well put together. Next, I'm going to go ahead and do a closer look at that dust jacket one more time. We'll see the interior flaps of that dust jacket before we transition to take a look at the under the dust jacket artwork that accompanies this collection. I have to say, I love under the dust jacket artwork. I've spoken about it before. It's definitely a nice facet for some of these modern hardcover editions from some of our big publishers. It feels like bonus art and adds a lot of character to these hardback books. The choice for this collection is a particular favorite of mine. I just think it looks really incredible, a little bit ominous. There's a hooded figure in some kind of old school library looking room, and it's a wraparound cover design on the actual hardback book itself. I really just think it's absolutely splendid. It's really evocative, and it absolutely makes me want to dive into the book. Reading the collection as well, you know exactly where this art comes from, and it's a pretty dynamic scene within a pretty interesting issue, but I won't spoil that here. We'll take one last look at that spread hardcover book itself before we go ahead and transition to a quick look at the binding for this volume. As I said, it is a nice sewn binding. I personally didn't have a ton of problems with it. I think with an omnibus like this, a little bit of gutter loss is to be expected. You know, this is a modern book, so we don't have the nice white margins on all the pages where gutter loss is kind of negligible. But you'll see as I flip through and you can determine for yourself what you think of the binding. Okay, and with all of this out of the way, we can dive into the book proper, and I can give you an idea of what to expect from this incredible omnibus. The first few pages are all really standard, with a nice title page and a kind of table of contents. It's more of a creator's mapping of the book. It attributes which creators went to which issues throughout the book. This is a Mark Millar and Bryan Hitch omnibus, so of course we have their entire Fantastic Four run within this book, but there's also a fair bit that are from Millar or Hitch separately that are included here, as well as something that's not by any creator but is heavily linked to their run. I'm of course talking about the Fantastic Force issues that are included. Another interesting note on this book is the Marvel 1985 series. That was something I knew almost nothing about before picking up this omnibus, and I have to say its inclusion here in this omnibus is a little bit baffling to me, but I absolutely love the storyline. It really doesn't have much at all to do with the Fantastic Four. Instead, it can almost be read as a standalone graphic novel about a kid in presumably our world who has Marvel characters invading his own. It's a really fun story written by Mark Millar, but I think that they just included it in this omnibus to maybe pad out the collection, give us another work from Mark Millar. Again, I really love the storyline, but it doesn't really have a ton to do with Fantastic Four. But it's nice to have it thrown in, make this collection a little bit bigger. But I did want to note that for Fantastic Four purists out there, finding that collection and just thinking, what is this doing here? I like to think of it as an extra, and wow, it's a lot of fun. As far as the Fantastic Four run itself, I really had a blast with it. Now, I had read the first 4 or 5 issues of this run maybe a decade ago, thoroughly enjoyed it, always meant to go back and finish out the run for Millar and Hitch, but never really had the opportunity for it before now. So I was really elated to finally finish it out, and I was really impressed. I think overall, I've heard a lot of mixed feedback about this omnibus, but I, for one, review it really favorably. I had a ton of fun reading this. I would definitely recommend it to any Fantastic Four fan out there and your general superhero or Marvel fan. Within its roughly 15-16 issue main run, there are maybe 4 different story arcs, but there are some overarching ideas, supporting characters, and the run does build with its own sense of momentum. No, this run by Millar and Hitch does not have the same narrative scope as something like the Jonathan Hickman era on Fantastic Four, but I think that there's a level of cohesion here that's still really evident, and there is a lot of great building narratives, but we get to have more episodic adventures rather than one gigantic master story. But I think that that's really to this edition's credit. I absolutely loved reading all of the different exploits of the Fantastic Four. It was really fun to get a handful of stories that I really just savored, and to really spin out from there to that Fantastic Four's 4-issue miniseries, well, frankly, it was just a lot of fun. And even though that series wasn't written or illustrated by Millar or Hitch respectively, it still ties into a plot element from their run on Fantastic Four, and I think it was a really worthwhile inclusion. Overall, I have to say, these characters feel like the Fantastic Four to me. I do think that Johnny Storm's Human Torch has maybe never been more vapid or seemingly shallow than within the pages of this omnibus. He felt like a very flawed character, but in some ways was relatable and engaging, certainly. I do like to see the state of Reed and Sue's relationship in this volume. I think there was a level of complexity to their marriage relationship that we don't always see explored within conventional Fantastic Four runs, and I thought that that was a blast. We also had a pretty decent showcasing for the Thing, who has his own life events within this run that I think are definitely worth reading. Overall, it is a very fun book. I think that they could have maybe leaned into more of the family elements within this collection, but there are still a lot of great moments. I think particularly for fans of science fiction, as always, the Fantastic Four is a great recommendation, and this collection is really no different. I think that this really holds up, even though it's approaching, 15 years old, some of these issues. I think that they are still fresh and vibrant today, as maybe when they were first penned. They certainly don't feel dated, and I loved visiting these stories. I think the art predominantly provided by Bryan Hitch is a really large reason for that. I'm a big fan of his work on the Ultimates, and this run here on Fantastic Four has that same kind of cinematic scope and experience, that widescreen format look to it. There's definitely a lot of world building within the art itself that is really immersive, engaging. I think the character models go for a more realistic approach than a zany, more cartoony animated style you sometimes see, and I really appreciated that. Like I said, fully engaged throughout this run. I think they played with a lot of interesting ideas that I hadn't really seen explored much in the pages of Fantastic Four. Generally, I think while this is a shorter run on the title, it's one that absolutely should be read by fans. I, for one, very much enjoyed it. Marvel 1985 again was a very fun inclusion, something much different, and even though the artist was not Bryan Hitch, there's still a familiarity with this kind of art style that I was never really pulled out as I transitioned from one work within this omnibus to the next. It's a great cohesive story that has some trademark Mark Millar stylings to it, a very gripping story, thoroughly enjoyed it, and so happy we got that to cap the book. And after that, we really have a healthy amount of extras at the back of this omnibus, which I'll show you a sampling of. I really enjoyed it. I do think it's funny that a lot of the extras actually revolve around Marvel 1985, which was an interesting choice in a Fantastic Four omnibus, but I was still really happy with the wealth of extras here. We got a lot of different production images, sketches, different levels where you can really see how they develop some of the stories here. We have some variant cover art, and just generally, I'm very happy with the amount of extras we got. And that's really it for this Fantastic Four by Mark Millar and Bryan Hitch Omnibus. I had a blast reviewing this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want a more extensive review of this book, definitely follow my channel, The Comic Book Report. I'm going to try to drop a more lengthy review in the coming weeks. And if you want your own copy or other comic book collected editions, of course, check out organicpricedbooks.com. Thanks for having me, everyone. Thank you for watching, and until next time, have a good one.